roll! That's all we got.
Teenage savages go wild in a juvenile jungle of lust and lawlessness.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back once again to another fine episode of the Ferris Wheel Classic Rock Show.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm one of your hosts, co-creators, co-conspirators, and the legend in my own mind,
And definitely in your own mind.
Ferris Kennedy. And to the left of me, a man that always fields phone calls from Bridget Bardot.
Always. She's so persistent in her little animal claims. Dr. Ian Clarke.
And right of me, a man that likes to date women slightly younger than him, but then realizes that he wants to go to a massage parlor instead.
Stephen Wheeler.
Gentlemen.
That's called self-incrimination, but watch yourself.
And just like to give a big shout out to one of our streaming sites that we're on, Cap City Beats.
Yes, it's great.
And our email address for those listeners that we always accept constructive criticism, hate mail, fan mail, whatever you want.
Actually, just compliments, but okay.
Which is the
Unending praise.
Ferris Wheel Show at gmail.com.
Calm.
What do we got going on today?
You know, today is going to be great. I'm going to talk about one of the ultimate bands of the classic rock genre. And I've titled this little tale, The Wonderful Tragic Story of John Fogerty and Creedence Clearwater Revival. And it's wonderful, and it is tragic. And I think I'm going to do my little talk here in two parts. The first part I'm going to call Dr. Clarke's Report, because it's a factual account of the band. Some of our younger listeners may not know the CCR story. Second part is called Dr. Clarke Operates. And in a way it's going to be more interesting, so hang around. Their story is one of love, hatred, trust, deceit, talent, mediocrity, ambition, laziness, perseverance, and resignation. So everything. It's Shakespearean. It's a classic tragedy. Part 1. CCR was together from about 68 to 72, just to give you the parameters on this. Initially, they consisted of lead guitarist, vocalist, primary songwriter. I'll keep that primary in caps. John Fogerty, his brother, rhythm guitarist Tom Fogerty, the late Tom Fogerty, bassist Stu Cook, and drummer Doug Clifford. Now, this is important to remember. They were around since 1959. These are not overnight guys. First called the Blue Velvets, and then later as the Gollywogs. Unfortunate name, but that's what they were given. CCR's musical style, so they've been called swamp rock, blues rock. They had this kind of southern gothic thing going too. They're from San Francisco. And everybody thought they were from, Mississippi. There's this thing about bayous and catfish. But John Fogerty, loved the iconography of the southern states. And it's also telling that they rarely spoke of romantic love. And this is the 60s. They focused on a lot of political stuff, socially conscious lyrics, the Vietnam War that was going on. They performed at the Woodstock Festival. And yet, as I'll tell you later, they got themselves taken out of the movie and off the album. Fogerty's a prickly guy, and I'll hit on that. Sold 28 million records in the U.S. alone. They had a greatest hits collection. I think it's called 20 Greatest Hits. It was released in '76, and it's still on the Billboard 200 chart for 500 weeks. Good Lord. They've sold over 10 million copies. And Rolling Stone magazine was Love's List, puts them 82 greatest bands number 82 of the 100 greatest bands of all time. Sometimes these lists are silly, but there you go. I bet you the Beatles are number 1. Anyway, John Fogerty, Doug Clifford, Stu Cook met in high school in California, called themselves the Blue Velvets. In 1964, they signed with Fantasy Records. Please remember Fantasy Records, because they become later kind of an evil influence. You're entering the land of Mordor with them. They were an independent jazz label in San Francisco, and they wanted to make some money off this crazy new thing called rock and roll. They had Fantasy's co-owner, a guy named Max Weiss, renamed the group the Gollywogs after some children's literary character. Now, it's interesting. Cook switched from piano to bass, Tom Fogerty from lead vocals to guitar, and John became the band's lead vocalist and primary songwriter. It's funny the way bands switch around like that. Van Halen, as I understand, did a similar thing. 1966, John Fogerty and Doug Clifford were conscripted into the U.S. Armed Forces. It's really funny to see pictures of him in an army outfit, but he was. Clifford joined the Coast Guard. 1967, Saul Zaentz. Boy, keep that in mind. Saul Zaentz bought Fantasy Records and said to the guys, why don't you record a full-length album? Cha-ching, he knew. And he had them change their name, and they wanted to, from the Gollywogs to Creedence Clearwater Revival. At the time, a lot of bands called themselves far out things, the Strawberry Alarm Clock or whatever it was. And Creedence Clearwater Revival can join that crew. Their first album in 1968, they covered an old rockabilly song called Susie Q, and it became a top 40 hit. And they also did a version of Screaming Jay Hawkins' I Put a Spell on You, which is it's a good cover, and this is the way they launched themselves, not through original songwriting, but through covers. I'm going to do this show in two parts, as I said, so that's one of them. Do I hear, hang on a second, a slight knock somewhere.
Oh, hello.
And now it's time for Ian's Knock, a little segment we like to call Affairs with Rock Show, where Ian himself will rant and rave on books, reviews, musicians, artists, people, or whatever just does not go his way back then. Who knows? You might be on Ian's Knock, 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 knock.
Fellow classic rock lovers, what are we to do about aging rock stars? What can be done? You can put them in wheelchairs when they're in the recording studio, but what about when they tour? Well, The Guardian, big newspaper in England, in March 2020 published an article called The Road Will Kill You, Why Older Musicians Are Canceling Tours. So this is slightly pre-COVID, just slightly. So it's worth it. Let's go with the article. And a chilling quote from the much-loved documentary The Last Waltz. Leader Robbie Robertson of the band looks into the camera and says, "The road will kill you." I remember that. At the time, he was just 34. Now, 4 decades later, musicians of his storied era are still on the road and facing escalating health issues as a consequence. Since the start of this year, Ozzy Osbourne, age 71, had to cancel his 2020 tour to seek treatment for issues related to his recent diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. Elton John, 72 years old, had to ditch dates on what was already advertised as his goodbye tour after declaring himself, quote, extremely unwell. Oh my God. Excuse me. Madonna, 61, was forced to scratch a bunch of shows from her British tour due to, quote, overwhelming pain from injuries she sustained on the road, which already caused her to nix some U.S. dates. Meanwhile, Aerosmith felt compelled to disinvite drummer Joey Kramer from their Grammy performance over alleged difficulties the 69-year-old was having keeping the beat, while the group itself had to scratch dates due to various health issues suffered by Steven Tyler. 56-year-old frontman of Metallica, James Hetfield, needed to cancel shows to, in his words, quote, look after my mental, physical, and spiritual health. Wow, like 26-year-olds don't say this, right? These guys are really getting on. All this comes hot on the heels of an escalating wave of older stars who've either quit the road entirely or begun their last hurrahs, including Paul Simon at 78, Bob Seger, 74, Kiss, ages 68 to 70, Neil Diamond at 79, Eric Clapton at 74. What's going on here? From a guy named Dave Brooks, it's a quote, he organizes, covers the concert industry for Billboard. He says, quote, the fact is it's really hard to tour. It's hard on your body and mentally difficult too, unquote. Many believe it's a very real problem the industry faces as these guys get older and older. What's going to happen to the industry itself? Well, the industry's going to start barking like a dog. That's what's going to happen. If you ask me, it is a dog. keep that barking up. Especially since the audience members who attend the older shows, have deeper pockets, so they say, raising the profits for everyone. You know, for most artists, touring is the biggest revenue generator. According to Brooks, the touring industry is generally estimated to generate between 50 to 60 billion worldwide, aided by expanding markets in Eastern Europe and Asia. Keep that in mind. Even if the industry can keep thriving, however, there's potential peril for elders who keep trying to slog it out. 2017, Tom Petty died after finishing a tour at the age of 66 due to overuse of medications he was taking to deal with pain accrued from a lifetime on the road. Well, among other things, including a knee injury and a fractured hip. My God. After his death, his wife, Dana, told Billboard, quote, he had it in his mind this was his last tour and he owed it to his longtime crew and his fans. The clear implication is that Petty died in part because of the sense of duty to support the team around him. Prince died in 2016 from overdosing on prescription medication he was given to deal with pain caused by years of leaping around the stage in high heels.
Same thing with Michael Jackson.
So, what does this mean to classic rock? Well, it means you'd better get out to see your favorite classic rock band when they come through your town, because they may not be coming through again, at least in one piece. It also means that as rock and roll ages, and we've spoken about this in other shows, the parameters of classic rock change. So instead of classic rock being defined, say, from mid-60s to the early 80s, it'll be extended out to now the early 90s, perhaps. This is going to be organic. So you will always have someone to see. They just might be pushing walkers to the microphone. And if they drop to one knee to sing a ballad, they will need medical assistance to stand up. So whatever happens again, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Okay? And this has been Ian Clarke with Ian's Knock.
That's a fantastic. You know what's funny? You talk about those rockers that are claiming, or not claiming, but have some health issues, right?
Oh, yeah.
You got Bryan Adams just turned 61 on November 5th in 2020. He's
serious?
still going. Yeah, he's 61.
He looks 40.
And then he looks his age.
Okay.
And then Keith Richards turned 77 on December 8th,
God.
December 18th, 2020. And he had said that I might have some issues, but it doesn't matter. He says, for the 60th anniversary, he says, I'll still go in a wheelchair if I have to.
Good
So-
Lord. You kind of, God bless Keith.
And you know what's funny? I don't want him to ever die.
Don't worry about it.
If you believe the internet memes, he will never die because every time you light up a cigarette, you extend his life by about 2 minutes.
All right, let's get back to it. After Woodstock, his second album, the number 2 album goes platinum. It has a single on it called Proud Mary.
Redone by Ike and Tina.
It's been done, I wrote 100 times. It's literally 100 times. And Born on a Bayou, that was the flip side of it. I'm going to step back from my little prepared script and say between 1968 and 72, John Fogerty was like John Lennon between, let's say, 63 and 66.
Could do no wrong.
It was like the gods bowed down and went ting on his forehead, and they blessed him. Months later, during 1969, he released Bad Moon Rising on a single backed by Lodi.
I see a bad moon rising. Hey, the bad moon on the rise.
And the trivia there is people thought he was saying, there's a bathroom on the right. And then now in concert, he'll do that version sometime.
No,
not this one. Edit this. Okay, so the band's third album, Green River, was, again, can do no wrong. August 69, reached number 2. The Commotion was on the flip side. Back, what I'm saying with the flip side here.
What year was that again?
1969.
69!
Jesus Christ. I hate it when he drinks. Okay. The band's third album, as I covered that. Nighttime is the right time. They continued to tour constantly, performances in July 69 at the Atlanta Pop Festival. You don't hear much about that. In August, at a festival you don't hear much about at all called Woodstock. Yeah, John Fogerty thought their performance was inferior, and he cut them out of the film and the album too. Now, years later, I think in 94 or something, during a commemorative Woodstock set, he let them include 4 songs. I've seen their performance. It's not that bad. It's he's a moody guy. He's just a temperamental guy. Anyway, that's just the way it worked.
But he is CCR though.
Yeah, we'll get to that. No Fogerty, absolutely zero CCR.
People are like, "Oh, do you like CCR?" I said, "You mean John Fogerty, right?"
Yeah,
Because
and those
like
guys that backed him up.
that's like there was this touring band. Really,
Yeah, they backed them up because you'll see what happens.
he could have gotten away with saying John Fogerty, like Neil Young and Crazy Horse, John Fogerty and CCR.
Diana Ross and Supremes.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, and Paul McCartney and the Beatles. No,
No, good lord.
that could have been. Actually, I would have been okay with that.
Well, that would have been the 70s version.
yeah,
He could have.
He probably would have done it too.
Yeah.
And that guy's good.
Can I just sidebar for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
When John left, if Paul decided to kind of still keep it going, he could have kind of went Paul McCartney and the Beatles.
I think then Harrison would have left. Because
Fine, still Paul McCartney and the Beatles.
No, and the Beatle.
The Beatles.
Yeah, it's a good one, actually.
Well, technically speaking,
That's Ringo.
Technically speaking, if he would have asked Billy Preston to continue forward and maybe reach out to Johnny Hutchison,
Or Pete Best. Pete,
oh, that really went over well, eh?
You want to make some extra money, Pete? You're back on drums. Sorry, Ringo. No.
Pete, we're doing a fireman calendar, and guess what? They need 2 good-looking dudes, and I just figured might as well help you out.
Yeah,
Which, mind you, he hates being called the cutest Beatle. He hates that, Paul McCartney.
I know. Well, be grateful now, anyway.
And then George Harrison gave his wife to Eric Clapton.
Yeah, I know. How to get rid of your wife? Well, Eric's taken, yeah.
12-step program. Oh my god.
God, poor Patty.
Sorry, Creedence Clearwater revisited, as you
Well,
were
wait a
saying.
second. Then the Clapton happens to write a song about her called, I don't know, Layla?
Oh, that was her name?
Yeah, no, he changed it. It was originally Patty, and then it didn't come across to, how about Layla? But it was written about her. What do you do when you get lonely? Yeah, it was written about her. My God.
He was still in love with her.
Couldn't break it.
Yeah.
But that's what, I really saw. Anyway, where are we? We're at CCR's 4th album, I believe, called Willie and the Poor Boys. My sister bought that for me years ago.
$22.99 off Johnny the Cat Records. You can get it.
November 1969, Down the Corner, Fortunate Son. Like, these are amazing. These are classics. You just can't get over this. The year 1969, they finally ended up by appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show. Kind of popular at the time. My God.
Even in 69?
Yeah.
No.
Sullivan went
Oh,
on. He
yeah.
had a good run all the way up until,
70 something.
Really?
When
Yeah.
Letterman took over in the 80s?
Oh, no, he didn't go that long. Nice try.
Tom Snyder took over?
Tom Snyder. God. Every time I think about it. They released another double-sided hit. By that, folks, I mean, of course, 45 for people in the know. Traveling Band on one side and Who'll Stop the Rain on the other. It just doesn't stop this, does it? It's just incredible. In April, they toured Europe. John wrote Up Around the Bend and Run Through the Jungle about Vietnam. Like, these are amazing songs. Their 5th album, Cosmos Factory, some people call it their best. I don't know about that one. Looking Out My Back Door and Long As I Can See the Light. Like, these are all classic American songs. Now, we're starting to get into weird stuff. Pendulum, their 6th album, released in December 1970, had Have You Ever Seen the Rain? Oh boy, now, this is where it gets kind of funky. Tom Fogerty decided he'd had enough and resigned from CCR in early 71. Okay, so they became a trio. John Fogerty, this is where it gets kind of murky, folks. In the spring of 71, John Fogerty did an about-face and informed Cook and Clifford that CCR would continue only by adopting a democratic approach. Each member would now write and perform his own material. I think Fogerty must have been committing slow suicide here, because he would have known that's like demanding Ringo write songs. You're breaking the Beatles up.
Well, writing was not so bad. Singing them,
Writing was no. He had like that man. Imagine McCartney saying, "Okay, I'll stay in the Beatles as long as Ringo keeps writing songs or starts them." Are you out of your mind? This is gonna, and that's exactly what happened. The other 2 members started writing their own stuff, and it was a fiasco. They toured. The band's final album, number 7. Was called Mardi Gras, this April of 72. A Rolling Stone reviewer, John Lamb, this is a great quote about Mardi Gras. He said, quote, he called it the worst album I've ever heard from a major rock band. That has gone down in history. Lando, of course, man, is somebody called Bruce Springsteen later on in his life. They embarked on a 2-month tour, and they finally broke up in 1972. So that's the end of part one. But before I get into part two, I want to introduce a close friend of mine who's sitting at the same table, and he's perfected something called yes, no. And he's kept us on the edge of our chairs with it, and he'll introduce his topic to us right now.
And now, Yes or No with Ferris Kennedy, the segment where the sick, drug-addled mind of Mr. Kennedy forcibly asks Dr. Clarke and medicated Wheeler yes or no questions about classic rock, and you get to hear the sick, drug-addled answers.
Makes my knees freeze.
Dr. Clarke?
Yes.
The feud between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones was a PR stunt caused by Andrew Loog Oldham.
That's absolutely true. Didn't exist in real life.
That's right. The Beatles' song I Want to Be Your Man was originally given to the Rolling Stones.
That's true, the first hit.
In an interview with Howard Stern, Ringo Starr stated that they owe a huge gratitude to Paul for the amount of songs they wrote. He was, in Ringo's words, the driving force, basically a workaholic. Yes or no?
Well, that's true. He's a workaholic.
When John Lennon said the Beatles were bigger than Jesus, they had to meet with the Pope to get an apology.
False.
No, that's true.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
They did not. The Beatles did not meet the Pope.
They did.
No.
They
To
had
get
to
an
go-
apology?
Yeah,
No.
remember when he said that we're bigger than Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
Yeah. Something with the Pope that they had to get. No?
No. They did not meet the Pope to get an apology. I'm really sorry I said that.
They're Anglicans, aren't they? Anyways,
Yeah, they would be Church of England.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
They'll see the Queen.
Yeah.
Lennon was more open to suggestions on songs being written, as Paul was more systematic and had a plan.
Oh, gee, that's a really weird question. It was more open to songs. Yeah, he experimented more.
Okay. Vince Neil of Motley Crue and David Lee Roth of Van Halen were known as Hollywood Blondes. Would you say they were the face of the respective bands during their prime?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely no. I would say.
Okay. And the last one for you, sir. Safe to say you're not a big fan of Frank Zappa, and if so, why?
I think Zappa he's a great musician, but he had issues. He was too conflicted in my book to be, how can I say, I don't want to dump on the guy too much, but I have issues with Frank Zappa's records and his movies and his songs, and it's kind of complicated, but I think he was closer to a novelty act than a rock band. And I've listened to the Mothers of Invention and stuff. It's a novelty stuff. He's a bitter guy, and I don't find his humor. I find it sophomoric for the most part. I've known people that worship Frank Zappa. And I wasn't with that laugh. You're a little giddy.
All right. Well, that's good.
All right.
So next for you, Mr. Wheeler.
Yes, sir.
Ozzy Osbourne and Frank Zappa never performed on stage together.
What about Frank Sinatra?
Well, I highly doubt I don't think they ever did. But
Okay.
the question really is
Never.
that
No, I think, in time-wise, it works.
yes or no, they did or did not.
They did.
You're wrong. They did
Not
not.
bad. It sounded so great.
Because there was this rumor saying that Zappa had defecated on stage and Ozzy ate it. And in an interview, they
Jesus.
they asked Zappa this, and he goes, "It's totally false. It's basically BS. I've never, ever did that, and I've never performed with Ozzy on stage ever." So
I don't know which one insulted him more when you think about it.
I thought the story you concerned Eugene Normandy and the Philharmonic, but I guess not.
Iggy Pop has been quoted that he has got some issues.
Yeah.
Okay. Howard Stern and Leslie West from the band Mountain are actually first cousins.
Sounds plausible, yeah?
Well, yes or no, sir?
Yes.
Yes, they are. They actually are cousins. You never listen to the stuff I talk about, do you? That's okay.
I do. It's just you talk a lot. I don't have that good a memory.
Ringo Starr has one song he sang on each Beatles album, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. No Phil Spector, not much would have been produced in the music.
That's highly debatable. A lot of stuff would not have been as popular.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
With the exception of Eddie and Alex of Van Halen, Michael Anthony from Van Halen has been on all 12 studio albums during his tenure with the band.
Yes.
And the last question, safe to say, you are not a big fan of Depeche Mode. And why?
I have nothing against them per se. It's one of those bands that was really big for a long time, and I just never got into the sound.
And that is my yes or no.
No, excellent with that. I'll
Stop.
So now Dr. Clarke operates. Okay, so the dry, indisputable facts of an incredibly successful classic rock band. We've heard those. So let's peel back the album covers and look behind the music. And for all the musicians among our listeners, please take note of the CCR story. It really is a kind of a parable, how success, ego, and greed can turn wonderful dreams into nightmares. Okay, by this point, Fogerty was not only at direct odds with his bandmates, but he also had to come to see the group's relationship with Fantasy Records, right, Saul's Aunts, as really, really bad. God, he had problems with Saul's Aunts. Now, Cook claimed that because of poor judgment on Fogerty's part, CCR had to abide by the worst record deal of any U.S. recording artist. And it's true. It was horrible. But you can see what's going on here. Everyone's blaming everyone. They're like kids. They're just snapping at each other. In the end, they all signed the contract. They were all of age. And they were young, but they were all of age. So maybe Cook shouldn't complain so much. So Cook and Clifford eventually started a band called Creedence Clearwater Revisited. Oh, man. Now, I'm going to read it. You know what I mean? Imagine that, like John Paul Jones and whatever, Robert Plant start a band called Led Zeppelin 2 or something. You know, just stop it. You just go, is there any other thing you can do? Wash cars or make some food? Just don't do, you're degrading the brand. Now, the following comes from a lengthy interview, Fogerty gave, to Swedish magazine called Pop in '97. I'm going to quote from it because he's really opening up. He's a guarded guy to begin with, but I don't know what it was. Maybe he was having some fun in Sweden. But he opened up and he said, quote, "I was alone when I made that music. I was alone when I made the arrangements. I was alone when I added background vocals, guitars. I was alone when I produced and mixed the albums. The other guys showed up only for rehearsals and the days we made the actual recordings." Interesting, eh? At one point, we only had one hit, Susie Q, and that there wasn't really a big hit anyway. Either this new album would be a success, something really big, or we'd have to go back to washing cars. Then we had a big fight about it. We all went to an Italian restaurant, I remember, and I told the others that I, for one, didn't want to go back to a car wash. Now we had to make the best possible album, and it wasn't important who did what, as long as the results were great. And of course, I was the one who should do it. I don't think the others really understood what I meant, but at least I could manage the situation. The result was 8 million selling double singles in a row and 6 albums, all of which went platinum. And I was the one who created all this. Despite that, I don't think they understood what I was talking about. They were obsessed with the idea of more control and more influence. So finally the bomb exploded and we never worked together again. Now recall I earlier said that he demanded they write their own stuff. So Fogerty, I don't know what happened with that. It's kind of a cloudy miasma, that particular nugget of when the tables turn from him being the chief songwriter to demanding the other guys write songs. So in '73, Fogerty began a solo career with Blue Ridge Rangers. That was a kind of a vanity project. Like McCartney, 1, 2, and 3 albums. He just recorded all the instruments. Under his old CCR contract, however, he owed Fantasy 8 more records. Like, it's just such a bad deal they signed. In the end, he refused to work for the label. It was resolved when David Geffen of Asylum Records bought his contract out for $1 million. On Asylum, he released John Fogerty, self-titled album in '75. Next major hit was called Center Field in '85.
Put me in, coach!
Excuse me, which is a good album. Bought it when it came out. Excuse me, he toured in '86, but refused to perform CCR songs. Like, because he didn't want to give Saul Zaentz, a fantasy, any money off the royalties, of which he would have made the bulk of, right, as a songwriter. Like, it's like he had a slow motion breakdown. Now, you're going to hear this. This is classic rock mythology. You can see it on YouTube. Saul Zaentz sued him for sounding too much like himself. He said one of the songs, The Old Man Up the Road, sounds too much like Better Run Through the Jungle, or rather Run Through the Jungle from 1970. Fogerty had to suffer the humiliation of going into court and playing both songs to a jury, which decided finally in his favor. Like, it's just bizarre, sounding too much like yourself. Now, not to kind of get back from it, when you listen to both songs, you might want to do this after you listen to this podcast, they are pretty close. So you can see why it went into litigation.
But
right?
he is John Fogerty. That's his song. At the end of the day, Mr. Zaent,
Saul Zaentz.
Zaent had, to me, I'm glad he lost and Fogerty won, because A, Fogerty was CCR, B, he wrote 99% of the songs. I'm almost positive, maybe 100%.
Yeah.
Okay? So in other words, you're getting sued because you sound like yourself. Well, I'm sorry. He's the brand.
No, but the melody sounded, Better Run Through the Jungle, An Old Man Up the Road. Like, it's close, but hey.
He's Fogerty.
But the thing is, also, Mr. Zaentz, didn't he make you enough money? He made you a multi-zillionaire.
Is Zaent still alive?
No, he's dead.
Nah, for good.
I know.
Serves him right.
But actually, Fogerty wrote a song about him called song Mr. Greed and Zaentz Can't Dance. Saul Zaentz sued, and he had to change the name, or rather from Vance Can't Dance to Zaentz Can't Dance. These guys were litigation crazy.
Wow.
Now, I read his autobiography, John Fogerty's, called Fortunate Son. It came out, my fellow podcast members here know I like to read about rock music. It came out in 2016. One reader reviewed it as like this, quote, "Boy, I was expecting a really in-depth look at what drove John Fogerty to write all those great tunes. Instead, we held a long whining session about all the guys that done him wrong, most notably his ex-bandmates. Funny how all the way through this, the one common theme is that everybody else was doing something wrong to John Fogerty. Perhaps a little perspective is needed." Interesting, eh?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy, he's for a songwriter, he's so bitter, and he tries to kind of paper that over, and he did get screwed, but that was 50 years ago. He's had a pretty good life. So,
Well, some people never forgive and never forget.
I know, but it just eats you up, man.
Oh, yeah.
You got to move on.
But to come back to your point, though, I think it was a kind of conscientious decision to have the other guys write, to make them realize they didn't do the work.
Good.
They didn't put in the hours.
That's good psychology. Good point. That's a great point. You suffer now.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they sucked anyways without him, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, but also you wouldn't want, people listening to the album going, wow, this is CC. It's like a really bad Beatles album. Really? Like side 2 of Yellow Submarine. George Martin. Speaking of classic rock, though, and classic vinyl, maybe it's time for a vinyl review.
Oh, hello.
The music at night, it sounds bright on Wheeler's turntable. He shines a light, he keeps his vinyl in sight, and gives you his magnificent review. Now here's a clue we have for you. It's time for Wheeler's Vinyl Review.
All right, we're talking about blinds today. Vinyl blinds, no.
Venetian blinds.
Those are Italian vines.
So yeah, today we are going to torture the good doctor because we're going to talk about the police.
Roxanne, you don't have to.
Every breath you take,
the asthmatic song.
every move you make. So yeah, basically you talk about, Stuart Copeland and how he didn't like him and he would fix his crash cymbal to cover him on stage.
Shit spinning?
Yeah, he hated Sting.
He's unlikable.
They couldn't stand each other, but yet they decided to stick around for what, 7 years, something like that.
Something like that.
Cha-ching.
Five albums, something like that.
Cha-ching.
Yeah.
So every move you make, the studio recording. So this is a box set that came out in 2018. Still available, although very expensive. And basically, it's a little tour of the police world that shows you that they went from a punk band to a jazz to a prog rock to a reggae band, all sometimes on the same album. But
Whatever was selling.
well, exactly. They are the chameleons of the rock world.
They
of the
all
late
dyed their
70s.
hair blonde.
They were new wave to me, though.
They were anything you wanted them to be.
Okay.
Actually, that's a really good way of
You know
putting
what I
it. Like they were what
you
the
want.
exactly.
Yeah.
So one week they would be new wave, the next week or the next album, they would be something else. So in this box set you have, of course, Atlantos d'Amour,
Yeah.
which actually, to those of you who think that's French, that's not French.
It's Pig Latin.
It's Pig Latin at the very least. So this is when this came out in '78. So you have to put yourself into context. This is the Sex Pistol era.
Oh, Elvis Costello. Yeah, The Clash. Sure.
Declan McManus.
I know.
And you're starting to hear the new wave and the reggae guys in the
Yeah.
background as well. But the thing is with the Police, these guys were really polished. The Good Doctor said, like,
Yeah.
the look of them was actually very studied.
Oh, they used to color coordinate their clothing.
Exactly.
Like, oh man.
So they are the anti-punk to a certain extent, but they love the
They're
sound.
geniuses.
You'll see the evolution through all the records. And so if you don't have a Police record, but you know some of the song, this is actually a really good box set to get because you have the entire history within the box. The thing is, though, the sound here is very good. It's quite vinyl. Comes from Germany most of the time. I don't think there's been a U.S. pressing, and they have been said to be better than the American pressing, which is not really hard. Late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
American pressing tended to be noisy. But they are said to be even better than the UK pressings, which from that area is actually a really high praise. For those of you out there that are analog snobs, I have to warn you, this is not from the original tapes. This is from HD remixed files,
Pressed on vinyl.
but they sound really, really good. And also, if you're buying it for a Police fan, there's a large booklet of black and white band photography that's included in the box set. Although for $200 US,
$200?
you seriously hope there's a
Whoa. For the Police?
I don't think I know anybody that's a Police fan for $200.
$200
No,
US. There's absolutely no way. Goo goo goo. That's all I want to say to you. Really?
Don't stand too close to me. Don't stand.
Jesus.
So some of them have been remixed, and it's actually quite good. I had a note somewhere. I think it's one of the guys that did the Let It Be. One of the engineers from the Let It Be re-releases.
Oh, Jeff Lynne. Yeah.
Miles Showell. It's from the Abbey Road. Sorry.
Okay.
Jeff Lynne did that one too.
And so
He's 68. Didn't you write well on my guitar?
Gently Weeps.
Yeah.
No, he produced the White Album.
He produced the album. That was it.
That's it. He pushed
So it's one of the engineers. So he is known for doing really great work on what we could call legacy albums, and so he's one of those people who cleans them up without doing too much damage by playing around with the sound. So it's a buy for really big Police fans, or if you have a friend in your life who knows all the songs but has never had one of their records.
Okay.
For those of you who have some good recordings, maybe not as much.
Okay. Thanks.
That's your review?
That's my review.
Wow. So for you guys, any other reviews that you want Wheeler to take a look at, see if he has them, email us at theferriswheelshow@gmail.com.
Or you can buy me one and send it to me.
That's it.
Email us. We'll send you his address and his home phone number. No.
And his Tinder profile.
Okay, let's finish off CCR here. What are we left with? Well, we have a very talented young man who, from about 68 to 72-ish, was a hit-making machine. I don't know how this happens, but it happens to people. And we have the classic problem of two brothers in a band. It could be Oasis, it could be the Kinks, it could be the Wilson Brothers, Beach Boys, whatever. It's almost a trope in rock music. So when Tom Fogerty left in 71, beginning of the end. To quote John Fogerty, I have very confused feelings for my brother because there was a time when we were very happy. The best I can say in Tom's case is he was the older brother and the younger brother had a lot more talent. Therefore, he was jealous, even to a greater degree, than the other two in the Creedence Clearwater revival. Yeah, could be some truth to that. You have a young band that signed a horrible record deal. Then in 1980, he signed away the rights to his early songs. So that's why 5 years later, he was sued for sounding too much like himself. He won, but the whole damn thing is very bizarre. Name me another case like that. Tom's death didn't soften John's attitude toward the other band members. In 93, when CCR was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Fogerty refused to allow drummer Doug Clifford and bassist Stu Cook to perform with him at the traditional end of the ceremony jam. So the other two, Cook and Clifford, went back on the road with Creedence Clearwater Revisited. Like the whole thing. And then in 96, he sued Cook and Clifford, seeking to prevent them from using that name. And he won a temporary injunction. In the words of a music rock critic, Fogerty has become a litigation junkie. That's from 2000. It's probably a little strong, but in 2000, he also sued his former attorney, Kenneth Siddle, who helped him win back his costs following the plagiarism case. So it's, I feel sorry for the guy.
I feel sorry for Clifford the Big Red Dog. They actually sued the poor guy.
I know, and he did such a good job on those books. Kind of simple. Clifford is tired. Clifford just took a 10-pound note. 10-pound, how about 100-pound?
It was a big friggin' dog.
It was a big bag there. Clifford, my back hurts. How many more of these are going to drop? So John Fogerty has his issues. On this side, he's alive, healthy, with a strong family life. He plays kind of this off-the-cuff rock and roll with his sons and daughter. So they've worked out in the end for him, but still his career stands as both an inspiration and a warning. It's an old battle cry, the arts versus business. Involving friends and family in a business is tricky. In a way, the fact that he even survived makes him a kind of hero. And that is my look at the wonderful, tragic tale of John Fogerty in Creedence Clearwater Revival.
That is excellent.
Thank you.
Is that all the time we have for today?
I think so.
All right. For all your listeners, please, you could also find us every Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and the rewind on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. at Cap City Beats.
You sure can.
You could follow us on Instagram under the Ferris Wheel Classic Rock Show, Twitter, the same thing, alongside with Facebook. And please email us your suggestions at theferriswheelshow@gmail.com. So signing off to the right of me,
Stephen Wheeler.
to the left of me,
Dr. Ian Clarke.
and I'm Ferris Kennedy. Thank you for listening.
Bonjour. Au revoir.
Anybody want to rock and roll? That's all about it.
Teenage savages go wild in a juvenile jungle of lust and lawlessness.